Welcome to the Print Design Podcast, the show where we talk about all things print and packaging. We go behind the scenes with designers and talk about the print projects they designed that really rock their world. From file prep to holding the finished product in their hand and all the key decisions in between. So, let's talk ink on paper.
Jackson, welcome to the Print Design Podcast. How are you, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing fantastic. It's great to connect and talk print. I'm excited to get into this.
I am excited as well. I like to talk about print things.
Excellent. And, we're going to get into the story on how this all came to be for you. But first, why don't we start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Jackson. I am a father, husband. I have a wife named Becca. And I have three daughters, Claire, Scarlett, and Olive. I live in Cleveland, Tennessee. I'm originally from Texas. I grew up in West Texas. I am a illustrator / designer by profession.
Cool.
And I've been a illustrator, designer, whatever you want to call that, for probably, 15 years now. Now my main thing for the past 7-8 years, since 2013, has been King's Wild Project, which is a luxury playing card company, and we make the universe's nicest playing cards.
And based on the pictures I've seen, I would agree with that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No worries. So 3 kids. How old are your kids?
Claire is 11, Scarlett is 8, and Olive is about to be 3.
Right on. Yeah, I got 3 kids myself, and I got 13, 11, and then my son is 10. 2 girls and a boy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know what boys are like, so I just hear they're stinky and
it's
whatever.
Madness. Everything you've heard, Jackson, is true.
Yeah.
Awesome to hear. So the King's Wild Project, how did that come to be? Where did that start? How did that become your thing?
Well, it's interesting. It is a funny, well, it's not really funny. Well, there's parts of it that's funny, I guess, but it is, I talk to my wife about this a lot, just about how life and coincidences and opportunities kind of align throughout life. Mm-hmm. And, a theme of my life has been, at least in my past, has been, great progress in my life has been made through kind of like tragedy. And this was 2000 and probably circa 2009, and I've been married for a few years. We are in the hospital giving. My wife is giving birth to our first daughter, Claire. This was 2009, and I had been a professional illustrator for like a boutique illustration studio for a few years. I've been out of college for a few years, so it was kind of like my first like serious gig after college, and it was going good. We were doing some crazy work, doing some awesome work for awesome clients and stuff. And then we in the waiting room of the hospital that we were having our daughter at, my parents were there, and I'm sitting in the lobby with my parents, and I get a phone call from one of my bosses, one of the owners of the company that I worked for. And he informed me kind of, bluntly that basically the company folded and that I no longer had a job. And before I could even like process all of that stuff, then my parents are sitting there in front of me. And then my parents and my mom and dad sit there and say, Jackson, we have some bad news. Your mom has stage 3 breast cancer. And so I'm like, so we have the birth of our first daughter. I lose my job, and my parents tell me that my mom has stage 3 breast cancer. And I'm like, well, great. This is going to be a great day.
Oh my gosh.
And I say all that stuff because like the great progress in my life has been made always through these kind of, moments of tragedy. And like something switched in my head that day. And I was just kind of like, man, life is so short, and there are so many things that I want to do, and there's so many things I want to try. And literally just like, I was like, I'm tired of this crap. Let's get going. Let's do something. Even if I fail at it, let's try it.
Giddy
So
up.
fast forward, one of the things that was on like my bucket list of things that I wanted to do before I was dead, I wanted to work. I was a big gamer, like a big video gamer when I was younger in college and in high school.
Yeah.
Now granted, I haven't played a video game in like 10 years, but
come on, Jack.
I haven't.
Come on.
I haven't. I mean, with my kids maybe, but I mean, I don't even have a TV. One of the things I wanted to do on my bucket list was like work in the video game industry. And, but I lived in Dallas, Texas, and there really wasn't that many video game industry jobs at the time. And so we were like, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm tired of waiting around. Life's too short. And so one thing led to another, and I picked my family up and I got a job as a conceptual artist at a video game studio in Los Angeles. And I moved to Los Angeles and I worked at a video game studio for 2 or 3 years. I was a conceptual artist. Then I was a character artist. Then I ended up becoming an art director. And while we were out there, like, we were kind of living, I was a Texan living in California and had never been to, I'd been to Los Angeles a few times. So it was a great culture shock for me. And like, I had a family and we had another daughter while we were there. And so, but we knew that we realized pretty quickly that Los Angeles wasn't where we wanted to raise our family. And during that time that we were there, I was making good money, but it was expensive. And, we acquired all kinds of debt, all kinds of other stuff. And we were kind of just running this circle and
get on the treadmill.
Yeah. The treadmill. And so I was like, all right, well, we gotta, check, done the video game industry thing. And we were like, we gotta start earning some extra money to pay off some debt so that we can move back to Texas and, turn the page of this chapter in our book or whatever. And so that led me, and this was 2012. And so Kickstarter, the crowdfunding platform, was still pretty new at that time, but it was seasoned enough that people kind of knew, people were familiar with it.
Yep.
And at the time, there were all kinds of projects and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to design a t-shirt. I've designed t-shirts before. That seems pretty easy. Let's do that. And in fact, it's funny. Ironically, I wasn't doing this but I actually, my very first Kickstarter was this t-shirt for this, this king's head with the gas mask and the sword going through it. And the design came, I'm trying to make all this pretty short, but the design came from, I taught a character development class at a school of visual effects in Los Angeles or Hollywood called the Noman School of Visual Effects. And during that 3D character class, my teaching style was I basically would create a character from nothing to concept to 3D to textures and everything, the whole gambit of everything that came with creating a video game character during the class, as my students were doing the same thing. And during that class, I created this kind of like 12-year-old orphan kid named Tugsy. And he was this redheaded orphan, and he was in a zombie apocalypse. It was like a zombie apocalypse kind of, scenario. And he wore red Chuck tees, rode around on a skateboard with a sawed-off shotgun, killing zombies. And I had to design for the skateboard deck. And this was before I had thought about playing cards. This was before I'd even remotely had the idea of playing cards. And on that skateboard for that character class, I drew a king with a gas mask on the skateboard. And when I came to the idea of, having doing a Kickstarter to earn some extra money, my wife was like, you know what, you should do that. You should that king head that you did with the gas mask. And for some reason I called it the King's Wild design. And she was like, and I was like, yeah, that'd be pretty easy. I had the work done. It was pretty easy. I mean, I did it like in a night. And so I made a stupid video for the Kickstarter project. And the funding goal was like $400 or whatever. And I was just like, whatever, I'm going to try this out. And, it was like a 10, 15 day project, and I earned like $4,000. And I was like, wow, that was
something here.
Now, that was pretty easy. And I was talking to my wife about it. And she was like, you should do another t-shirt design. And so I did a second t-shirt design and, raised like $4,000. And then it started getting me thinking. I was like, okay, there may be something more to this whole crowdfunding thing. And at the time I had seen a deck of cards called the Pedal Miscellaneous Goods Company designed a deck of cards. And they, at the time that they had raised, like on their Kickstarter project, they had raised like $140,000 for their deck of playing cards. And I was looking at the designs. I was like, these are really good. But my competitive nature came out, and I was like, I could design these deck of.
Come on, put me in.
Come on, let's go. Let's do this. And so I got the idea to design a deck of playing cards, but I didn't really have a theme or what I was going to do. And my brother Taylor, he's 4 years older than me, and he owns a production company. And we always talk about just ideas, and we throw ideas back and forth. And one day, and I have to give my brother credit because it was his idea originally. We were talking on Google Hangouts, and he goes, "You know what you should do, Jackson? You should design a deck of cards that looks like money." And I was like, Yes, I should design a deck of cards. And I was like, that's a great idea. And so, and the whole time I'm talking with my brother, I was like, I want to do this playing card project. I think it could be bigger than just, $2,000 or $3,000. I think it has potential to be something big, because there really wasn't. I mean, there's tons of custom playing cards now on Kickstarter, but it was very much still the Wild West when it came to the niche market of custom playing cards on Kickstarter. And so I started putting together my ideas and started doing the artwork. At the time, at the studio that I was working at, we were working crunch hours, which is 7 days a week. And it was ridiculous. And, I was being a horrible father and horrible husband and working late hours of the night, making this deck of playing cards. But I felt like that there was something to it. And my brother, I flew out to Birmingham, and my brother did all the kind of the promotional videos for me for the Kickstarter video. And he really knocked that stuff out of the park. And we launched the project, and our funding goal was, I think, $8,800, I think it was. And this was 2013.
So that $8,800, was that like just printing costs? Is that basically
the $8,800 was basically me paying the production costs, like not including shipping, not including postage.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I won't think about the IRS and taxes and blah, whatever. It was basically just to be able to pay for the minimum order quantity, the MOQ at the United States Playing Card Company for 1,000 decks.
Yep.
And I didn't know anything about playing cards. I had experience with print and packaging and stuff like that, but it was always from the standpoint of I was a finishing guy that just, painted pictures on already created substrates and designs and templates and all that kind of stuff. So the funding goal was $8,800, and we did a 30-day campaign. At the end of the campaign, we had raised $188,000.
Whoa.
And I was like, what? And I was talking to my wife, and my wife was like, you should do another deck of playing cards. And so I was like, you're right. You're a smart woman. I should do another deck of playing cards. And during the first Kickstarter, I released 2 decks during the first Kickstarter, the Federal 52, which was the first deck that started it all. Okay. And then the second deck, which is called the Gold Certificate. And they were all based on currency throughout American history. But I had already conceptualized more decks, like 5 decks, like a reserve note, a silver certificate deck, and other things. So the people that backed my project, they knew that there were other designs, and they were like, we want more of this. We want more of this. Continue the project, or continue the series. And about 4 months later, I continued the artwork. I continued the artwork and continued the series, and then launched my second Kickstarter project, which was the kind of Federal 52 Part 2. And the funding goal was like $16,000, because I had kind of learned a little bit more about playing card production. I had kind of scaled up the number of decks that I was going to do. And The funding goal was about $16,000. And by the end of it, we had raised, all in about $205,000 on that second,
Whoa.
that second Kickstarter project. And a side note to all this, the game studio that I worked with, and this is definitely not the case. This is definitely not the case with everybody at the studios that they may work with or whatever. But the GM at the game studio that I worked at, he was super supportive of just kind of the creativity and me kind of wanting to do my own thing and creating this stuff out of nothing. And, he was actually like he was like my first backer on both of my projects because, it was just a good experience. And I always like to say that because I know that that's not always the scenario with a lot of people, but
Yep.
that was a huge thing for me in terms of like, just being the encouragement that he gave me. And literally we the second project got funded like in 40 minutes and literally I had launched it while I was at work, like on my lunch break. And my GM was there with me when I launched it. And he looked at me like, an hour into the project. And he goes, "So when are you going to put in your 2 weeks notice?" And, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'm putting my 2 week notice in now."
Yeah.
He was like, "That's awesome, man. Do it." And I was just, oh, sorry.
All good.
I probably should turn that off. I can mute my computer. I apologize for that.
No worries.
So all those files in my brain were coming back, about just like when I was in the waiting room at the hospital with my mom and my job. And I was just like, life's too short. Got to do this, and my wife, I always kind of joke with my wife. I have this saying where I always say, "Well, they can't eat you." And so, I could fail, suck it up and it not go right. But it could not go right, but they can't eat me, and I can always start from the bottom again and it doesn't really matter. And so I quit my job and that was 2013. And I literally was like, you know what? I'm going to do this Kickstarter thing and design playing cards until it breaks and see what happens.
Yeah.
And over the course of 5 years, I did like 33 successful Kickstarter projects that were all playing card projects. I employ multiple people now and I have a whole shop and a warehouse and like it hadn't broke yet. And so I'm still doing it. And and it's funny now that I look back at all the things that led up to those things. And like, I couldn't see myself doing anything else right now than designing stacks of paper that go into paper boxes that they call playing cards. And, and it's an incredible experience for me because I basically could do whatever I want and to create these themes and, these stories I get to tell because at heart, I'm an illustrator.
Yeah.
And I get to tell these stories with these decks of playing cards that I love, and I can communicate with my community and my followers and all that kind of stuff. And it's been incredible. And so that's the long answer to your short question. So
that is an amazing answer to that short question. What a journey. Oh man. I enjoyed being on this roller coaster ride with you. That was just incredible. Going from that moment of like in the waiting room where it's like lost a job, punch in the face, mom's got cancer, punch in the face, and then birth of first daughter. Like what a complete contradiction where it's almost like you'd end up stunned trying to figure out like what just happened.
Yeah. What happened? What
Where are we? What's happening there?
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Hearing the story leading up to it. First question about the Kickstarter campaigns themselves that you've been running. And then I want to dive into a little bit about your history with print, like your introduction to print. So, what is the most successful Kickstarter campaign that you've launched so far? Which one was it?
The most successful project I've done was that second, in terms of, I guess, revenue, was that second Federal 52 project where I think the Kickstarter raised 188,000, and then like post campaign, like during like a kind of a pre-order period afterwards, we raised another, a total like $205,000 that project.
Bananas. That's incredible. Okay, Jackson, I'm going to kick this back in time a little bit here. I'm curious what your earliest memory of print or packaging is, from something when you were a kid or a teenager.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. My earliest memory of print and packaging. Oh man. I remember this was probably, I'm trying to think of the year. This is probably 1986.
Okay.
Like I probably remember things before this, but this is like one of the main things that like was burned into my brain.
Yes.
But I remember this hideously ugly Lego box design of this, because I'm a Lego nerd. I love Legos.
Absolutely, as you should be.
If I could like pick my camera up and like turn it around, you'd be like, "Whoa, bro, you need to relax on the Lego."
You got a Lego wall there?
Oh man, oh yeah, I got Lego wall.
Start questioning things.
Yeah, and the funny thing is there was this pirate ship called the Caribbean Clipper, and it was released. I think it was like 80. I think it was 86. I want to say it was 86. But it was this Caribbean Clipper, and there was this. And at the time, basically Lego, the way that they designed their packaging was like, bright. I mean, Pantone 130 yellow side walls, and then like a gradient. They were trying to like emulate a sunset, probably, I guess. But instead of that, it was like a blue to orange gradient, and then they would just like put the Lego on top of it. But I remember that, man. Though that pirate ship, my parents got that for me for a gift one year. Mm-hmm. And I remember I would put that box there, and I would make that pirate ship, and I would tear it down. I would make it again, tear it down, make it again. And then, but I remember that box. I remember that yellow, and I remember that gradient background. And the interesting thing is, about a year or two ago, my parents were bringing a bunch of my junk from their house. Yeah. And they brought this bucket of Legos, and it was like my Lego collection from when I was a kid. And that's it. See, look at that yellow, that sunset in the background, the Caribbean Clipper. Boom. That's it, man.
That's the one.
That's the one, man.
The Caribbean Clipper.
And I get this bucket, and I pull out that brown hull of the ship out of the thing. And I was like, it was like everything came back. All the yellow, the Legoland in Arial font, and whatever, ages 8 to 12. And I went through this process of like finding every piece. I got the instruction manual out. I didn't get the instruction manual because I didn't have the instruction manual. I didn't have the box. So heck, I bought the instruction manual off eBay. I found me a box on eBay, and I started piecing this pirate ship out. And I have the original pirate ship that I have when I was in 88, 86 up on this. That's my first one right there. That's that box. Cool. And I remember seeing those boxes with that yellow border, with that little yellow kind of 45-degree angle banner. Yeah. And that was just like, yeah, it's super ugly, but like, that's in my brain, man. Let's like turn the heat up and iron it in my cerebral cortex. That's what it was.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've been talking a lot about lately is that like Instagram ads don't have the power to do that. Print does. One of my earliest memories that's the strongest is Pogs. I don't know if you remember Pogs.
Oh, come on.
Those little
grass slammers and everything, man.
Yeah. I remember Pogs. That was like grade 4 for me. That hit. And to the point where it was so popular and so many fights started over like slammer matches going sideways.
Oh yeah.
Banned from elementary school.
That box. Like I remember how that box smells. That's awesome. That's how much I remember that box.
That's so cool.
And I could even remember going to like malls when people actually went to malls still. And I remember going to the toy stores, and I was like, because that was the little pirate ship, that was the Caribbean Clipper. Yeah. There was like another one that was called I think it's called the Barracuda Bay. And it was the bigger one that was way out of my parents' price range. But I remember that box, and I was like, oh man, that's got 3 sails, and the yellow's even bigger and
even more yellow.
More yellow. But now I got that. Now I got right next to the Caribbean Clipper is my Barracuda Bay pirate ship.
You picked it up. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, and I keep all of the boxes. I keep all the boxes, all the old ones, in my, right behind the Legos.
Yeah,
because that was so important to me.
That's part of the experience, part of the unboxing, part of the whole experience of that particular gift, that particular toy or product.
Yeah.
Love that. So I want to fast forward a little bit to recently now. So you're producing these brilliant card decks. You're around awesome print all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been anything else that you've come across in print that you were, surprised by or that you really enjoyed?
Man, that's a good question. One of the things I've been on this kick where, because of so much of I guess you could say as an artist, my own artistic style. I mean, even though I'm an illustrator, I feel like that part of being an illustrator is being like a stylistic chameleon and being able to like reproduce any type of style of art or design or whatever, depending on what the client needs. As an artist myself, I feel like my own kind of artistic style is like kind of like late 19th century banknote engraving and kind of like acanthus leaf scroll work, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And something that I've been like just like pouring into is like antique, like late 1890s, 1880s Victorian style books, like antique books.
Cool.
And like the intricate foil work and the design work coupled with like the embossing and then like you've turned it over and like the marble, like the hand marbled pages and stuff like that. I've been really pouring into that kind of stuff, and I've been like trying to find as many as I can and just and it's like it's that same part of the brain that I remember that yellow and I can smell that stupid Lego box. But like there's a part of those old antique books that just have this kind of sensibility to them that I've been trying to like find more of, because it seems like every time I find a new one, I find like 6 more that are ridiculously awesome, and they just inspire me to like want to learn more about that. And on top of that, a lot of my new stuff right now, because I'm so interested in it, I have a playing card subscription where I design a new deck of cards every month, and like this whole year is basically themed like classic literature, and every one of the decks that I'm doing, most of all the classic literature decks that I'm doing this year, like the uber nice version of that deck comes in a like this little tiny book box that looks like a book that I designed that's the size of a playing card, that at the end of the year, all of my followers and everybody that subscribes to it will have this little bookshelf of these decks of cards that look like these old Victorian style books. And they all have like custom marbling paper on the inside, and they have different kind of leathers. And I mean, it's not real leather. I mean, I just paint the leather. But these antique Victorian books have been really just like, I mean, they basically have inspired my whole entire kind of like body of work for this year. And my customers and my followers are, they love it.
That's so cool. As soon as you said that and started talking about sort of that older Victorian books, I remembered this moment from a couple of years ago. My whole family, we were vacationing in Ireland. So we spent some time in Dublin, and I totally forget the name of the huge university there in Dublin. It's very popular. There's a very, very old library there that students of the university can still access and still go to. But we walked into this place, and some of these old books, hundreds and hundreds of years old, are beautiful. Some of them are out on display. Some of them are just sitting in the shelf, and some of them are the size of my desk.
Oh yeah, they're huge.
And I just thought, some craft person, hundreds of years ago, put that together by hand, has touched that, wrapped that hardcover, that foil, the way that was done hundreds of years ago. Like, man.
Was it the museum that had the Book of the Kells? Because I know that
yes, we saw that as well.
Heck, I did a whole entire deck based on like the Arthurian legend that was inspired nothing but that Book of Kells. Like,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that place is crazy.
It was just amazing. The library there, and yeah, we lined up to see the Book of Kells, and when we walked in, they have this guy there who's constantly monitoring that nobody's like attempting to touch or lift the glass or anything for this thing.
Yep.
And then you start reading the history of this book and what has gone into it and how they very carefully like turn a page every so often so that if you come in and look at it, you could potentially get to see a new page every couple of weeks or something.
That's
like
crazy.
That. It's just phenomenal. But you think of the craftsmanship that went into making that.
Mm-hmm.
So just, books are fascinating and just they have that lasting power, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Jackson, what do you think makes print so sought after and special to designers? We're all like a little bit kind of like hoarders in a way where we get our, it starts with the iPhone box. That's the gateway. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you start seeing all these cool envelopes and these cool direct mails and different things that arrive. And you start building this collection of these tangible experiences. Like, why is that so special?
Whether it's kind of like the time that we live in or whatever, at least for me, and I hope that my own, kind of my own outlook on life can, could be a good, commentary on, the modern world, I guess you could say. But like, for me, it's like, and you probably hear this a lot, but like, there's so much of our lives that is digital now that is just, for lack of a better word, force fed to us, and from, artistic aesthetics, what we should think we should like artistically, the way that we think, packaging, digital, or whatever it is should be. There's so much of it that's force fed to us, just from a computer screen and whatever. And there's something about the tactile nature of, feeling print, feeling, like if it's letterpress, feeling the bite of the print in the paper, feeling the embossing, feeling the texture of the foil. And then also just like, and for me, at least, as, as a side note, as like a business owner, like at the heart of what I do, I tell stories. And those stories are told through these little stacks of paper that are in a box. And so basically my world revolves around telling a story in a stack of paper that's 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches and the box that goes around it. And what I have found that I feel like that is the biggest catalyst in bringing me the success that I have been blessed with is the fact that I'm kind of transparent about the process of the creation of all of those aspects that go into that little card box. I'm not like this artist. It's like, I go into my cave every 6 months and come out with my magnum opus, like whatever. I just want to make interesting things that I like and that I think that bring me inspiration, and just cross my fingers that other people want to buy it. Yeah. And just being transparent about that. And then I have so many of my followers that like follow me on a daily basis because, a lot of my work is done, like I do a live stream, and that's basically, I don't work unless I'm doing a live stream, and I always just am transparent about all my work. And so my followers and my community, they follow that whole process. And so when they get this piece of cardboard paper in their hands and in the mail, it's not just like, oh, I went to Walmart to buy this thing and, this deck of cards, or I went to this, that, the other. Like, they've been a part of this process for like 6 months, seeing like the development of it. They were there. They were watching when I drew this curve on this box, and they were there when I laid out the embossing layer of this box. And so they get this thing and then they put it on their shelves, and it's not on a computer. They don't have to look at it through blue light glasses, and they put it on their shelves, and they were a part of that creation of that thing that's printed and in a box right there on their shelves. And I think it's the same thing with like those antique books. Like at the time there wasn't, at the time that those kind of books were created, like print and books, like that was really the only form of entertainment. I mean, there were some forms of entertainment, but that was that was people's movies. That was people's Instagram. That was people's internet. And so that was the way that artists and illustrators had to like express themselves and to create these things that people could hold in their hands and be like, this is, this is what, that inspires me. Did that even answer your question?
Absolutely. You took me on a journey there, Jackson.
I was like, wait, what was the question? What was the question?
No, 100%. And really what the core, what we're talking about is in this world of this digital world where these, experiences are more and more augmented in virtual reality and all these different things, that tangible feeling of the emboss, the tangible feeling of that thick cardstock and moving cards in your hand and holding a deck of cards, like that becomes even more important, even more sought after, even more valuable, because everything is so digital that these little analog experiences become really important, special moments.
Yeah. I mean, I love my followers and my community. I mean, I got a group of followers that I don't even know what they call it. They do the smell test of my playing cards. So every time you get a new deck of cards, they go like they're sniffing cocaine or something, and they smell it. And, and it's just, but it's part of the experience. And it's like, those are the memories those are my yellow, ugly Lego box to a lot of people. And those are my crappy gradient sunset sky with the little 45-degree angle Legoland logo.
Yes.
And that's that for a lot of people, especially younger people that are just, getting into design and illustration and print. I mean, I hope that maybe sound conceited, but I hope that's that experience for some people.
Yeah, no, it's such an awesome thing to just the feeling of putting something out in the world that becomes an object, something somebody can hold and keep, pass down to their kids, and things that can become generational. Whatever Instagram designers are creating right now or website, like that's not going to be there in 10 years. That's good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I mean, we all saw what happened to Vine or whatever it was called.
Was that a thing?
Was that a thing? I don't know. I can't remember.
Awesome. Jackson, what was the very first print project you were ever a part of?
That's a good question. And that's a question that I know the answer to. When I got my first job in the print and illustration world, it was no lack of a better word. I got my first job from 100% BS, me BSing. And at the time I was finishing up school. I went to a state art school in Texas. Basically 6 years worthless of my life was art school. But that's another conversation for another podcast, whatever. But I was finishing up school, and somehow I had made contacts and met these two guys that own this boutique illustration studio. And I was just being an annoying kid, and hey, can I come by and see your place and see what's going on and that kind of stuff? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they were just being polite. And I hung around with them, and I was polite enough that I didn't, I probably was starting to wear out my welcome, but coincident happened, and the opportunity kind of crossed me being there, and they were called by an ad agency that at the time was doing like the big Christmas Coca-Cola campaign, like the Santa Claus, the polar bears, the penguins, all that kind of jazz. And I was just sitting in there, in the couch, in their, it was a little kind of one room kind of studio. And they knew I had some artistic ability, that kind of thing, but I had no portfolio. I mean, basically whatever. But somehow when the ad agency was talking to them about this job with Coca-Cola, it was a big job. It was like a 3-4 month project, $400,000 or $500,000 job to create a multitude of packaging stuff for the whole Christmas campaign. But one of the stipulations was that they had to, apart with the 2D illustration stuff that they had to deliver, they also had to be able to do stuff 3-dimensionally, like in 3D.
Okay.
And I had dabbled in 3D at the time. But when they looked at me and they said, "Do you know how to do 3D?" I went, "Yeah, I know how to do 3D."
Yeah, bro, you don't?
Yeah, bro. I 3D all day long, man. And I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about 3D. And they're like, "Good." And they were talking to this ad agency, like, "Yeah, we can do it." And they're like, "What's the deadline for us to turn in the spec work or something like that?" And they're like, "You got 3 weeks." And so basically from that point, I left immediately and I went home and I didn't sleep basically at all for 3
Guys,
weeks.
I'm just gonna go work on this in private, okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. And this was before YouTube. This was basically before readily available tutorial videos. This was me going to a bookstore, getting those fat, thick how-to books of like, oh, here's Maya 3D, whatever.
This 3D
is like
illustration for dummies.
Oh yeah, it's like this was me. This was just me like trying to figure it out on my own. And I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. And one thing led to another. And 3 weeks later, somehow I had been able to pull it off. And we turned in a Coca-Cola polar bear in 3D, whatever. And they gave us the job. I don't know why they did, but they gave us the job. And that year, I mean, that year, my first actual job in print was illustrating the Santa that was on the Coke can in 2006 and 2007 and the polar bears.
What?
And I was like, let's go. And that kind of led to, from that point on, that little illustration boutique studio, even though they folded and I lost my job. While I was there, I mean, I basically got a main line of just like stellar work. But I mean, I worked my butt off. Like I did like 300 Marvel comics and 350 Star Wars Galactic Hero toy packages and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, what? Let's go. And I was like, I don't know how long this is going to last, but I'm going to do as much of it as I can while they're paying me to do it.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my God. I can't believe your first ever project that made it out in the print world was for Coke. Like what the heck is that?
And my parents, they still have all of the cardboard cutouts at the grocery store. They have the English versions. They've got the Spanish versions. They've got
That's
all
awesome.
the Coke cans. They have the Coke cans on the mantle and all that kind of stuff.
So you're saying your parents have 4 or 5 different 6 foot tall cutout Santas that you illustrated?
Yeah, that I illustrated.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Why don't you have those, Jackson?
I don't know.
Might not fit with the new decor, just
yeah.
That's so awesome.
That was my first actual print job in the real world, in the wild.
Yeah, what an incredible project to be a part of. So before I get into and do a deep dive into this legal tender deck that we're going to dive into and talk about, have you ever been a part of a print project that went sideways, went off the rails, didn't turn out as you had hoped?
Bro, I've been a part of a print project that's gone sideways 3 times this month.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping you'd say. So tell me about one of those, man.
First of all, I'll tell you about the most. I am a horrible speller.
Okay.
And I'm the only one designing this stuff. Sure, I should have people proofread stuff. Whatever. But I have misspelled stuff on multiple playing card decks. I mean, I screwed up on one of my early decks was a Sherlock Holmes deck. And I had got a license from the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle estate to do a Sherlock Holmes deck. And just simple enough, it was a king of clubs, and on one of the corners I put the K, and on the other corner I forgot to turn a layer off or something like that, and it was a J instead of a K. And that one little letter cost me $16,000 for me to reprint the whole thing. And I screw up all the time, and it's whatever, it's gonna happen. And I stressed out about it a lot earlier in my career.
Yeah.
But I also made a lot more mistakes earlier in my career. But now that but mainly because it was just me early on in my career. But now I've got a team of people and a crew of people that at least some more eyeballs are on the stuff. But heck, we just released a deck. We just released a deck like a week ago that it was like I have this whole line of playing cards that are basically inspired by, we can talk about other things that inspire me. It's basically inspired by vintage tobacco cigarette packaging from the 50s and 60s. Yeah. And I've been doing this series of decks called the Table Player series, which every single one of them is just me taking these old designs, putting them in a blender and bring them back out in the form of playing cards. And I just released one that's basically a Lucky Strikes cigarette package. And instead of Lucky Strikes, it says King's Wild. And on the tongue of the playing card deck, I had this whole slogan that's on the aces and stuff like that. It's like strike once, strike true. And on the tongue, it says strike once, strike true. Like, no. And the funny thing is like my customer service girls, they were like emailing me and they were like, do you want to come up with a deeper meaning to this strike true thing? And I was like, no, I just screwed up. The funny thing is like now, like, because I've been doing this for as long as I've been doing, and I have this group of followers. The funny thing is these error decks that I do end up becoming the more valuable decks.
I was just gonna say that's now a collector's item.
Oh yeah, it's a collector's item. Yeah, because we'll end up, if we reprint it, we'll correct it. But then now you'll have, it's just like with people that collect like currency and money. Like the errored bills are the ones that are the most. At least that's what I keep telling myself. But don't tell.
No, 100%. They're way more valuable, Jackson.
Way more valuable.
Yeah,
way
exactly.
more valuable.
Yep, survey says way more valuable. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when I did that first one, that Sherlock Holmes, I totally screwed up. I finished the Kickstarter, and then 2 weeks later, I did another Kickstarter to reprint the deck that I screwed up, and then everybody bought twice as many of the reprint, but they had already bought the first one, and they were like, well, we got both now. We got the errored one and the correct one.
That's awesome. So in that second Kickstarter,
I totally did that on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. See, guys, now you got the valuable limited edition.
Yeah. Valuable Uber limited edition sealed cellophane gold tear strip.
That's incredible. So did you come out right and like say it in the second campaign? Like, this is the same one, but it's corrected.
No, that's totally what it was. It was like, yeah, I totally screwed up on the first one. I'm really sorry. I was an idiot. I'm going to do another project to try to correct it because I can't afford to do it because it was very early on.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to do another Kickstarter project and I'm going to correct it. And instead of doing a Joker, usually the decks have two Jokers, but instead of doing two Jokers, I just did an extra card that was the corrected king, that if they opened their deck, they could take that one card and put it in the other deck, and they would have two complete decks that were functional. Yep. And then have this extra errored card that people now trade by the card by itself.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah. But at the time, I'm sure you were sweating. Like, you're like, if this second one doesn't sell, like, I'm on the hook for this. Like,
I was like, I'm on the hook for this. This is when I was talking about in the beginning, I'm gonna do this till it breaks. This is when I was like, I guess this is gonna break pretty soon.
That's awesome. Oh, Jackson, that's so cool, man. Okay, well, let's get into the deep dive on this project. So you and your team sent over a bunch of pictures of this incredible project called the Legal Tender deck. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm looking at these pictures and they were sent over, and I'm just trying to, like, there's so much happening here, and I'm so excited to talk about this. Right from, like, if you're okay with it, like, what did this cost? How many did you produce? Who were the vendors? Like, how did you request a quote for this? Like right from the beginning. So, like, I'm going to pull it up on screen just so we can share it and talk about it at the same time here.
Well, one of the interesting thing about this project, and I think it was there's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it is because it's been through a long journey about, I would say 2000, it was either 2015 or 2016. Mm-hmm. I had the idea for this deck, and this was kind of like a follow-up deck to my other money decks that were more based on older currency.
Yeah.
And this one was This project, Legal Tender, was more conceptually in the beginning in 2015, 2016. It was based on, okay, modern money with more modern printing technologies like the holographic foils, the watermarks, the security constellation codes, and that kind of stuff. And at the time in 2014 or 2015, when I had originally had the idea and I actually made the first edition of Legal Tender, I had these ideas of using like the holographic foil and all these other things. But at the time, with the manufacturers that I had at my disposal at the time, they didn't have the technical ability to do the things that I wanted to do in terms of like the CMYK printing on top of the foil, the laminated foil and all this kind of stuff. They just couldn't do it.
Yep.
And the project, it was a Kickstarter, and it was kind of like it was a big letdown to a lot of people. Because I had originally kind of sold this idea of like, I'm going to do this great deck and it's going to have holographic foil and it's going to have these, security features, blah, blah, blah. Because I was wanting to like mimic modern currency. And it really was a letdown. And and critically, it was one of my more unsuccessful, more negatively responded to decks because of that kind of big letdown.
Yep.
Fast forward 2 or 3 years, and the playing card world, and I know that the technology has been out there for a long time, but it hadn't really made its way towards playing cards yet.
Yep.
In the sense that it's kind of like your cake and eat it too. To have these really cool technical abilities of like printing all these kind of crazy technical things like foil and foil lamination and printing on top of it, but at the same time being able to like put coating on top of it to where it still is a nice deck of cards that fans in your fingers, that shuffles nice. And at the time, it just wasn't really when I originally had this idea, it just wasn't possible. And then fast forward 2 or 3 years, I had worked with that same printer that printed that first one for me, and then we'd been working on developing these different techniques and working with these different factories and developing these print processes. And we got to a point where we could do it. And I was like, let's do Legal Tender again the way that it was originally supposed to be. With all of the holographic foil, the foil lamination, all that kind of stuff. And we did it. And the project that was probably one of my biggest busts in 2015, 2016 ended up becoming the deck that has been our most successful selling deck yet. Just because of, I mean, it's really a kind of a weird deck. And I don't want to use this word kind of flippantly, but it's a very magical deck. Even if if you flip through these pictures, like just way that the holographic foil, because the process that we use, like in this one, like here, right here with Grant, like what we couldn't do at the time when I originally did it, at the time, the processes that we had at our disposal was basically like hot stamp foil. So we would have to get a plate made of each design and hot stamp the foil. But through time and with my art style of like the really tiny line work and the engraving, there's no way you're going to
doesn't work with hot foil.
You're not going to get a foil hot stamp plate. And at the same time, get a hot stamp plate and foiled that it's not going to leave this huge bruising, debossing on the paper that's not going to like affect how it feels.
Totally.
But what we ended up working with was we took the sheet of paper and we completely laminated the entire piece of paper with holographic foil.
Okay.
And then we printed a opaque layer of white ink on the top of it for the sections that we wanted to have that kind of matte finish where we didn't want the holographic foil to come through. And then after we put the opaque white layer, then we printed the CMYK on top of that. And so it was basically like, it opened up this completely different approach to doing foiling in a way that I basically could get the same resolution of detail that I did with my CMYK printing that I could with foil if I did it right when I would use this opaque white layer in the beginning to like matte everything out. And then that's kind of what you see, what you see that ended up turning out. And since then, there's really nobody else that's really doing this right now in playing card world. And a lot of my decks now kind of use this kind of this kind of like this process to create this weird kind of magical ethereal look, which I think is, I mean, for me at least, it gives me an edge. But somebody's gonna come along and do it, but I don't care, whatever.
So when you're creating these decks, like, is playing cards? I've always wondered this. Is playing cards themselves, like, is it a specific stock that's exclusively for playing cards?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, it's like this. It's like this kind of balance that you have to play, because me as an artist, I need a paper stock that is gonna take the ink really well, is gonna take the detail of my line work really well, but at the same time, is gonna be able to be finished on the top of with finishes that it's gonna allow it to be a really nice deck of cards. It's gonna fan really well. It's gonna feel well, and it's gonna be able to shuffle. And that's kind of, so it's like this balance that you have to play. So there is definitely a specific card stock. Like I use the same kind of card stock on every deck that I do, because we found a specific type of paper that's the right thickness, that when you put the foil lamination on top, that it holds the ink well, that holds the finish, and that it also is about the same size as a regular deck of playing cards.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So let's just kind of go through some of these pictures and talk about, like, what do we got going on here? So in this particular one we're looking at, this is the stock that you use with a holographic laminate over top of the whole thing. Then you've got an opaque white, sort of reversing out the areas that you want to remain holographic.
Correct.
And so when I'm looking at this, am I seeing like holographic outlines up here? We've got this background handwritten text is holographic.
Yeah, the background is the Declaration of Independence
Awesome.
in the background. And so anything that you see holographic is basically where I do all the artwork first, and then I go back, and then I do a completely different set of artwork that's the opaque white layer, because it's not so much of it's not as easy as taking my layers of art and then, control all and then filling them in white. Because there's certain areas that I want to be opaque, and there's some certain areas that I don't want to be opaque. And then there's certain areas that I want the foil to show through, but at the same time, I want to be able to print color on top of it to give the foil like a different colored theme. Like I did another deck where there's like a gold foil as a base, but then I print like different oranges and browns and other things to give it like, oh, this is brass. Oh, this is copper. This is bronze. This is gold. But I'm using that base layer on top. So it's basically just like creating this secondary layer of art underneath to really enhance the level of the detail and what I want to be holographic foil.
So this one, same kind of thing, like all this, the Declaration of Independence in the background here. This is, and then just print on top of white on top of foil.
Yeah. And you can see there where like the monument, the cliffside has a brighter value, because in those areas I've toned down the opacity of the white layer so that the granite or the rock kind of gives it that kind of lighter value. I'm not printing any more white on it. I'm just letting more of the holographic foil shine through, so it gives it this kind of appearance of a lighter value, as opposed to the darker value of the background where it's all opaque white except for the writing.
Wow, it's incredible.
And like for the first deck that I did, that was kind of the flop, like the eagle in the background in this picture, and then that J in the top right, and then those little pinstripes of hollow foil. All that was just in the first one. I just did like a CMYK print color of holographic foil, and it was just lame, and it didn't work out because it didn't have that punch that you get with the light reflecting off of it. Just like when you're painting on your computer monitor, everything looks real good because it's backlit with LED lights, and it's never going to come out that way on a piece of paper. But
dude, that's like the conversation I have most with designers, when they're designing, on screen. This is like, look at it. And now I'm printing it on uncoated paper in CMYK. And I'm like, this doesn't look the same.
This green looks. Look how good this green looks on my paper. I mean, on my screen. oh, look how it looks when you print it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a full education thing. And, the other big kick I'm on right now was talking to designers about branding. When you're putting your brand guidelines together for a rebrand that you've just done, like you need to include your uncoded CMYK, your uncoded Pantones, your coded CMYK, your coded Pantones, hex, RGB. Like you got to include everything in there because you don't know how this is going to be used.
Oh yeah. That's for sure.
Crazy. So in this one here, same kind of thing. We've got the holographic foil coming through, like in just super tight illustration and lines.
And I just want to repeat, like the crazy thing about this is the entire surface of the card, both front and back, is completely laminated with foil.
Yep.
And we just print on top of that.
Yeah. So you're just killing the foil look with opaque white in certain areas, letting it come through in others, and others is kind of a balance in between.
Yep. And when you get that really stark contrast between the matte areas that aren't foil or that appear not to be foil and the foil, it gives that appearance like, wow, that is the most detailed hot foil stamping that I've ever seen, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we're not going to tell anybody, right? We're not going to tell anybody, Dave, that it's not hot foil stamping.
No, guys, this is hot foil. You just got to find the right guys.
It's hot foil. It's all
the right vendor. That's incredible, man. Okay, so how many of these do you produce when you go to print with something like this and you're launching it out there? How many are you generally printing?
When we did the first print run of this deck with this new version with the holograph, we released it last year in July 4th. And at the time we printed, I think we printed 5,000 decks that time. We sold out of those in a few months, and then we ended up reprinting them, and we printed 10,000 decks for the reprint. And interestingly enough, like the process that we were using was still so new between the first print run and the second print run, because it was like not really feasible for me to get like prototypes made and like samples because it was I might as well just do a print run if we're going to do it. So it was so expensive that I was like basically, and at the same time, I'm not working for a client. So it's all on me. And so if it screws up, it's my gig, Yeah. And so the first print run, we hadn't really like honed in on how the opaque white layer worked the best. And the first print run I did, the whole card was kind of like had this holographic sheen and it wasn't quite working right. And I got the deck, I got the 5,000 decks. We sold through them, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to tweak this even more. And I tweaked the design and we reprinted it, and we printed 10,000 this next one. And it was that second version. It was actually a third version because if you count the one that was like in 2015, it wasn't until that third version, that's what you see in front of you, that it was like, this is what the idea looked like in my head, in 2015. And we printed 10,000 the first run, and we've sold out of those, and we just got another print run of 10,000 delivered like last week.
Yeah.
And it's been our best selling deck, in the history of our company. And the decks that are like it, that are doing these types of things that a lot of the other decks of playing cards aren't doing, those decks are starting to rise to the top and becoming our best sellers, just because it's just this extra depth. And at the same time, like I'm totally the guy that does, I call it feature creeping. I don't want to feature creep when it comes to because to me, foil is feature creeping, and I don't want to use foil unless I need to, unless the design calls for it. Because for me, and I think this is good for anybody, especially new artists and new designers. If you are building your portfolio and your professional career on feature creeping, like hoping that these cool techniques and technologies are what gonna sell you as an artist or a designer, you're not gonna last very long. And so, and that's why I'm like okay with like talking about the process, because I don't care if people copy it, like copy the actual technical process, because probably people are gonna do it. And it was around before I was figuring it out. And that's why I try to make the art and the craftsmanship and that story that I'm telling the main thing. And that's what goes above, this cool printing process or whatever. And that's what's going to allow me to not worry about feature creeping and not worrying about somebody stealing my, my idea of this cool process. And I want my art to be what holds, I want my art to be Times New Roman so that in 100 years, people still like it.
Yeah.
Not to be papyrus, but however, I am going to make a papyrus deck just as a joke.
As you should. Absolutely.
I should.
Quickly followed by the Comic Sans deck.
Yes. Comics. Well, I've already done Comic Sans. I did a crayon deck with my daughters I printed out the cards and they colored all the court cards and we totally used the Comic Sans and it was awesome.
That's awesome. Something about Comic Sans I didn't know about, just a little bit off topic, but I found out during a couple of interviews ago that Comic Sans is actually the most legible font for dyslexic people.
I can imagine that. I
had no idea. I was like, that's incredible. It's like, so all these people out there bashing Comic Sans, it's like, just incredible.
I can totally see that.
So this deck, is there also embossing going on the outside box?
There's embossing on the box, and the box itself was printed the same way that the cards were. We took the same kind of substrate and laminated it with foil, and then printed the opaque white, and then printed the ink on top. So it's got embossing and it's got foiling, and then CMYK. I'll use spot colors here and there, but most of my stuff is illustrated in Photoshop and printed CMYK, just because my own art style is such that, it doesn't lend itself very well to spot colors.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
And are you using local vendors primarily for this stuff? You're not doing anything overseas?
I'm doing a lot of stuff overseas. The sad truth is nobody in the United States can do this stuff that I've been able to find. I print a lot of stuff with the United States Playing Card Company. Like I'm doing more of I call them technically light decks of cards, where it's basically straight up spot color printing or straight up CMYK printing with kind of like basic stuff like embossing, foiling, and stuff like that on the box. I can do all that stuff in the United States, no problem, and it's not cost prohibitive. But if I'm doing stuff like this crazy experimental stuff, for me it's experimental, and for the playing card world it's experimental. I have to do a lot of this type of stuff overseas. With that said, I've developed a great relationship with a company in New York City called the Expert Playing Card Company that basically all of my decks now with this kind of like these new processes, it's just, I've built a great relationship with them, and, we print these decks overseas, and I work with them out of New York, and it's been great. And it's kind of a thing of like, and I know that it can be kind of like whatever the political climate is, whatever. Like for me, it's ultimately, I've got this idea in my head and I don't care who prints it. I just want to be able to get what I have in my head out into somebody's palm of my hand the way I want it to be.
Who can execute it the best right now.
And I'm going to do it with whoever I can, that I can continue my business and not go broke and still make a really great product.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a beautiful project for sure. So vendor sorted out, quantity sorted out, chatted about that, talked about specialty finishing. When you're proofing something as intricate and as detailed as this, are you just looking at PDF proofs on screen? Are you like getting hard copy proofs with different layers that you're going through, or how are you proofing these?
Oh, that's a good. This is probably not going to look good, but I have so many. How to say this? I have never gotten a hard proof ever in my life. I don't know what it is. Because I know that the hard proof is not going to be anything like the final product, because I know how they're making the hard proofs. And usually the stuff that I'm doing, like even like this deck of cards, like how are you going to get a hard proof of this tuck case? You're not going to get a hard proof. I mean, were they going to print on an Epson, inkjet?
It's going to look nothing like it.
Yes, it's going to look nothing like it. And so I have more relied on my experience with printing and physical printing to where I don't ever get a hard proof. And in terms of proofing, I find the vendors that I work with and that I work well with, like a place in San Diego does a lot of my tuck cases, like my letterpress work. And then the place in New York does all this kind of crazy foiled stuff. Like I work with them. I know what to expect in terms of final product. And I know that just doing enough jobs between those people that I know that these things that I'm giving them is going to give me this. So the experience is much better in terms of a hard proof. And so I never get a hard proof. That doesn't mean that I should probably proofread things more.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because you're totally right that, when you're getting something, especially if it's CMYK and with crazy effects and stocks like this, like the hard copy proof, the most it's going to show you is how the different layers are. Yeah. Making sure that the content is correct on each layer or with each process, right? That's sort of the most you're going to get to see, but you can see that PDF.
Yeah. Like I'm working on a project right now for a fantasy novel called Mistborn, and like, it's probably going to be the first time that I've ever even like gotten like a prototype deck. And it's more of just, I'm just at a point now in my business where I can afford kind of doing that, to where I'm just going to do, it's not even really a prototype run. I'm just going to do like a print run of 1,000 of the final product, just so that I can take actual pictures of and actual photographs and video of, because it's very similar to this deck where you have all this crazy weird stuff. And I'm not going to be able to sell as many unless I'm taking an actual photograph of all this crazy, ridiculous stuff. Because I could make a 3D, I can do a 3D conceptual rendering of it, but I'm always going to have that asterisk at the bottom. This is a 3-dimensional conceptual rendering of the final product.
Yeah. There's certain things, and it's like anytime you're trying to describe a certain paper to someone or a certain finish to somebody, you're not going to describe it like verbally without anything visual. Like, how do you do that? Yeah. You need something proper and visual to really show it and to really sell it. So that's where that's going to be really powerful. So when you're designing a deck like this, I mean, I know you did that sample run back in 2015 that didn't go great. When you're ready to rock with this and on the first run, with the holographic foil, like how long does that take from here's the idea, let's refine these files, to holding a finished deck in your hand?
I am so easily distracted by shiny things that I have learned in my life that if I can't finish a project, and this is just more like the actual art creation, the content creation of the project. Like if I can't finish a project in 2 or 3 weeks, I really shouldn't even start on it, because by the time the 2 or 3 weeks is up, I'm going to see something shiny over here and I'm going to want to go over there, and I'm going to lose all inspiration.
Yep.
And it's going to end up, I'm going to end up phoning in the last half of that project or whatever. And so, but in terms of like production time, let's say pre-COVID production times, let's talk about that. Pre-COVID production times, like whether I was printing in the United States or whether I was printing overseas, like, from turning in my proofs and approving artwork and approving proofs with the manufacturers, like I could probably bet on like 4 to 8 weeks of production time of like proofs approved, contract signed. Oh, here's the FedEx delivery truck bringing me decks of cards.
Yep. But
now with like post-COVID stuff, especially in the United States, like you're going to be lucky. I'm going to be lucky if I turn in artwork and approved proofs that 16 to 18 weeks later, I get a deck of playing cards.
It's crazy.
It is. And with the way that my business works, in the sense that I have a playing card subscription where I've got to design a new deck of cards every month. And
you got to get so far in front of it
and deliver it. So, and I'm not really that far in front of it. Like I may be 3 or 4 months ahead. And I was really far ahead of it pre-COVID. And then COVID hit, and then it just like, and it just messed it all up. Yeah. And I'm just now kind of catching up to like getting in front of it again. Like I just like even printing like in the States was like, I can't produce a deck every month and production times being 16 to 18 weeks. Now production times with, overseas may still be 6 to 8 weeks, but it's just kind of like one of those things of like, do I take this poison or do I take this poison? Let's just choose the one that's less, I guess.
Yep.
And it's just trying to figure out how to kind of cope with that. And unfortunately, and that just leads to a whole bunch of other stuff of like, shipping costs and freight and sea freight and all that kind of stuff has, skyrocketed because the whole world is different now. And everything costs more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything costs more, 100%. Yeah, it's been a real weird last year and a bit to navigate on the print side of things, being in it daily, and to the point where you're struggling over board supply. Like people aren't board suppliers, and mills are sort of manufacturing for their own little home base. And export. It's harder to get paperboard exported now.
Yeah, like this is probably November of last year. It was the paper stock that this deck of cards is printed on. Like the factory in Belgium was like, because of COVID, was like going out of business, and they were the only people that made this paper that we had found so much success with. Blech. And we were like, well, crap, what are we gonna do? And so we bought like the remaining stock, like a container full of this paper stock, and had it shipped to our factory where we're doing the printing. Just like, we were like, okay, we print 10, 15,000 decks a month. This is going to last us maybe till April, March. But luckily enough, we've been able to find a newer, thinner paper stock that's actually better for what we need. But at the time, it was a real thing. And I had never experienced that before. And just even last month, like I was using like a simple Mohawk key color fairway green paper, just like a readily available key color paper that Mohawk makes. I mean, they used to make it by the truckloads. And I had to cut my production in half just because we couldn't get just this basic paper, and we had to wait. We had to wait 4 months to get the paper in.
Crazy.
When before it was like, oh yeah, here's all the key color paper you want or whatever kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's a strange world, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Like getting the insight onto how something as intricate and as wild as this was created has been amazing. So thank you so much for sharing that, Jackson.
Yeah.
I wanted to wrap this up with one final question here. And it's sort of you've been on this journey for a while, so I'm really excited to see your answer for this. But what advice would you give a designer or an illustrator that is brand new to print, hasn't done any print before, they want to get into it? Where do they start? What would you suggest where they start?
That's a good question. And I'm gonna answer this question with a short story, or at least I'm gonna try to be a short story. In my 6 years of worthless university art school, during that worthless 6 years of my life, I probably learned the single most important lesson I have ever learned for my professional career as an artist. I was in a pottery class.
Nice.
And I was like a sophomore. I was doing the thing. I was taking design 1, design 2, drawing 1, drawing 2. I had to have my elective. Well, we're going to do pottery, blah, blah, blah. Let's do it. So I go to this pottery class, and we sit there. It's the first day of class, and the instructor sits down at a pottery wheel, and he throws a pottery just a basic vase, nothing special, just a vase. And he was like, he looked at the entire class and he said, your final grade for this semester, you will have 1 grade, and I'm going to split you guys up into 2 groups, and group A and group B. And at the end of the semester, here's how I'm going to grade you. Group A, you are going to get your entire semester's grade on 1 vase that your entire group turns in. And I want it to look exactly like this vase. And you'll get 1 grade for 1 vase. And then group B, he says, group B, you will get graded on the number of vases that you turn in. They don't have to look like this vase. They don't have to look like this vase. They don't have to be perfect like this vase. But your grade is going to come from the number of vases that you turn in. And so we go about our direction. We start going through all the different stuff, and both groups are doing their thing. They're making vases. Group A, the one that was going to turn in 1 vase, was like pouring over the details. I'm like, I got to get this curve. I got to get this curve of the vase just right. I got to get the top just right. I got to make sure that the calipers, it's the exact same width of his vase. And they were, and that group was like pouring over all these details, and they were learning, and they were getting better because they had been taught the skills to make the vase. And then the other group, that group was just like
just cranking out vases,
throwing mud, like slinging, like making pinch pots and making like little pitchers and making stuff that looks like junk over and over and over again. So fast forward by the end of the semester, and the day comes where we have to turn in, both groups have to turn in their vases. And group A, the one vase, they put their vase on the table and it looks real good. It looks real good. And the professor's like, this looks really good. This is a really nice vase. You guys get an A, whatever, or B plus or whatever.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as good as the professor's vase. And then group B, my group, I was in group B. I was in the group that we were getting graded on the amount of vases that we turned in. Okay. We had probably 15 shelves of vases. And oh yeah, the first vase, the first couple of shelves looked like dog food. By the time you got to the last 2 or 3 vases, we had hundreds of vases that every single one of them looked exactly like and perfectly matched the professor's one vase that was perfect. Well, perfect for what he gave us as a standard.
Yeah.
And it was that one lesson and that kind of one kind of moral that I learned from that story that I have taken on to all of my work. And I say that in my own work, like I have so many ideas, and my number one goal is, yes, I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make some dog junk work a lot, and I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to keep failing, and I'm going to keep making crappy stuff. But if you got to look at it like, you're investing in mutual funds. Like if the more stuff that I do, the more work that I produce, and the more ideas that I execute, and the more ideas that I get from my brain and onto a piece of paper, onto a box, incrementally, I'm going to get better and better and better. By the time, compared to somebody else, like a competitor that is doing that thing where I got to get this curve perfect, or I got to get this thing perfect. Yes, they're going to get better, but they're going to not produce as much stuff so that they will get better. But there will come a time where I'm investing over time, and my crappy days where I'm totally failing is miles past this other person's best day. Yeah. Just because I've produced so much stuff and churned through so many ideas. And if I would say anything to a new designer or a new artist, the seeking perfection is the killer of anything creative. And your focus should just be to churn out as many ideas as possible, whether they are crappy, good, or the best idea, lightning in a bottle. You should just be trying to take what's in your brain and facilitating it onto a box, a piece of paper, or something, and make it a realistic thing as much as you can, because that's what's going to make your crappy days. You're going to be miles ahead of the other guy's best day. I don't know if was that.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I love that story that goes along with that. 100%. I completely agree.
And I remember that guy. He was wearing those red and black lumberjack shirts. I remember when he was throwing that first vase. I remember like that ugly yellow Lego box.
Yep. Just do it because you're going to get better over time.
Oh yeah.
It's like the your first book that you write, your first logo that you design, the first print that you do. Yeah, it's going to suck. The first podcast you do. Yeah, it's going to suck. Yeah. Get it out of the way.
Yeah, let's go.
Get her done. Giddy up.
I would always call you got to get through the suck, Yeah. And you have to get to a point to where you like the suck, because you have to equate the suck with achievement and getting better. And like if you're not going through the suck, you're not getting any better, and you're not propelling yourself forward. And so like I've gotten to a point where I love the suck. And I know that if things are hard and if things are like screwing up, it at least means that I'm moving forward and I'm doing something and I'm creating something.
Yep. You win or you learn.
Yeah, you win or you win or you learn. That's right. That's right.
Jackson, this has been incredible, man. I
Yeah.
want to be cognizant of your time here, and let's wrap this up. Thank you so much for being my guest today and diving into this stuff. The work you guys are putting out is incredible. Where can people find more about the subscription, find more about you, and get their hands on some of these decks?
Yeah, you can visit our website at kingswildproject.com. We're on Instagram at Kingswild Project, and also if you want to see a bit more of a behind the scenes type of thing, every morning at 5:30 a.m. Eastern time, I do a thing called Dawn's Early Light, where that's where I work. I go on YouTube and I cast my work live from about 5 o'clock in the morning until about 9 o'clock, and that's me just working, doing my thing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's why your camera's so good. You're set up for that live stream.
Yeah, every morning, bro. Every morning, Dawn's Early Light.
That's wicked. Thanks so much,
man.
I
got another view. Boom, there we go.
Oh man, look at that little board where you just hit the button and switch her up, bro. Not messing around here.
Yeah, no, we're serious, man. We're serious.